The good news is, a bilingual contract in China, you can find an English-speaking lawyer, Chinese lawyer. I think I'm on the board of advisors with a law firm called Asia Bridge and China Bridge, and they charge maybe $400 to draft a tailor-made contract that's bilingual. So there's really no excuse for not having a bilingual contract. These are the hallmarks of a good contract. First hallmark, you've got the contract with the right party. You would not believe how many buyers, especially if you're a new buyer, think you're doing business with a factory. You pay the money to their trading company in Hong Kong, and you've got a contract with an agent or a broker. No one really set out to cheat each other, but then if you need to drag somebody into court, what will inevitably happen is you think that you're taking the manufacturer to court. The judge brings them in, and the manufacturer says, yeah, we've got a purchase order from this Australian buyer, but we never received any funds. And you say, wait, I sent the funds to this account. Well, that's a different company. That's in Hong Kong. And then you drag the Hong Kong company into the court, and they say, yeah, we received these funds from Australia. We don't have a matching purchase order. We didn't know where they came from. We've already spent the money. And then how do you connect the dots? You can't. So my suggestion that I'll repeat over and over again is to make sure that the name on the contract in local language matches the bank account name, ideally matches the name on the factory door or the agency that you're using, whatever. So if those three are the same, then your contract is going to have muscle. So as I mentioned, some other hallmarks of a good contract: it's readable. Don't let your local lawyer in Sydney tell you about this 50-page watertight contract. It might not even get read. So break it down. Think of it as a memo of understanding. Get it 4 pages or less. And when I talk about being bilingual, I don't have it like 2 pages English, 2 pages Chinese. What I would do is like a paragraph or a couple sentences in English, translated into Chinese, and then a signature for initial it or chop it. And then I don't just hand the document to the supplier via email and say, get back to me. Let's do a Skype call, or let's do a video call, or let's meet in person at the trade show and go through each of these items one by one. And I also like to do it in front of their peers, because if a vendor knowingly breaks the terms of contract, he's going to lose a lot of face to his peers. So I like to make a signing ceremony something special. I'm buying lunch, guys. Drinks are on me. Let's bring a couple of your key employees, and let's do this signing ceremony together. And then we go over each of the points one by one as a group. So if the general manager cheats me or breaks the terms of the contract that were explained in such easy terms for everybody to understand, his employees are going to know that he's a cheat as well. So actually that loss of face sometimes has more influence than the fear of lawyers. Okay, appropriate jurisdiction. We had a great supplier in Zhejiang province one time that we worked with for 3 years. We transferred all this technology to them, and they got really bold, and they started counterfeiting our product right down to the patent number. And so now we've got a product that is counterfeit with our patent number out in the marketplace, and all of a sudden our defects that were normally 2% per season went up to 15%. It almost we've got a contract that says this that the supplier has to respect the intellectual property. So I was having so much fun. Like, we're going to get to shut this guy down. I'm working with the Chinese police. I've got the full support of the lawyers. Let's go in and get him. Like the day before we're ready to go in, they're like, let's see the contract. Oh, I let that New York lawyer tell me to put the jurisdiction in the U.S. because, of course, that lawyer wants to make money if it ever goes to court. What he didn't tell me was that a win in a U.S. court has no jurisdiction in China. There's no extradition treaty or anything like that. So even if you were to win a court case in Australia because you're first, how are you going to get that Chinese supplier that knows you want to sue him to come to Australia, to come to your court system? It's not going to happen. So in the case that I was talking about with counterfeiting, we basically went quiet for 2 years, hired a private investigator, and waited for this Zhejiang supplier to show up at a trade show in Las Vegas. And because counterfeiting is a federal offense, the FBI put him in handcuffs. But it took us 2 years to track this guy down. If I had just put into the contract, the jurisdiction is Zhejiang province, China, it would have been an open and shut case, and we wouldn't have nearly the headaches. One exception. So my rule, I like to say, put the jurisdiction near the factory, near the supplier, but don't put it too close if you're dealing with a giant factory in a small town, because the judge might be the factory manager's cousin. That happens all the time. So with these giant state-owned enterprises where there's a village of 20,000 people and 10,000 work at the factory, in those cases, you'd want to put your jurisdiction at the nearest provincial capital, regardless of where it is in Asia. Okay, a lot of us are thinking, all right, we've got this great contract, and let's put a clause in there that if the supplier breaks the terms of the quality or lead time or intellectual property, they got to pay a heavy penalty. And so I did that at first, and the lesson I learned was that if your penalty isn't realistic, the judge in Asia will rule it out. So you can't say, I'm buying $10,000 worth of earrings, and if the supplier gets the quality right, they have to refund me $200,000 Australian. The judge is going to say, that's not realistic. So the good news is that penalty clauses work if they're reasonable. So you're buying $10,000 worth of earrings, your contract might say, you get a 2% discount for every 48 hours that the product is late on delivery. And you have a clear delivery date, the supplier has chopped it or signed it the Asian way. And the court system actually loves those cases because they don't have to debate it. The penalty is pre-agreed, so the judge looks at it and you win an award. Getting the money out of the supplier, that's another question. Hopefully they're still in business and have real assets, but that's another talk. So having a clear contract with clear penalty terms, believe me, it will protect you. Okay, I'm not a lawyer, and I hope there aren't any lawyers from Australia in the audience that would disagree, but my experience has been when you go to a local lawyer here in Australia, America, Europe, often they have a partner behind the scenes that is either an Asian person that emigrated to Australia or a relationship with a Chinese law firm. And the local lawyer here gives some value-added suggestions, maybe editing the English, but they tend to double or triple the cost. I've saved so much money just by working with English-speaking Asian law firms to get things like contracts done, purchase orders, demand letters. So there's really, thanks to the internet, it's easy to find local lawyers that speak English. So there's no excuse for not having your documents reviewed by a local lawyer, whether it's India, Taiwan, Thailand, whatever. Also, a great contract under signature isn't as good as a great contract with the official chop. So in many parts of Asia, the chop is it's a physical stamp that represents the company. It doesn't matter who signs it. It's like who has possession of this red chop that is the official signature of the company, the binding. So, when you have this contract, it's not just the general manager's signature who may claim to be the legal representative. What if he isn't the legal representative? That signature has no value. A corporate chop, now that has real value. Now then there's a question of, is that chop real or not? And that's another discussion that we can have if you visit my YouTube channel. Okay, so now let's talk about quality. Where do quality and contracts meet? First, my first tip is, unless you're buying something so simple like a commodity, you're buying Mickey Mouse watches that haven't changed in 5 years, okay, you would assume that the factory is going to get it right. But if you're taking that Mickey Mouse watch, now you're adding a solar panel and you're putting some Brazilian leather on it, now you're making something new that maybe the supplier hasn't made before. In that case, you almost have to assume that there will be quality issues. So ask the supplier if there are defects, who pays for the rework. In my 17 years of dealing with suppliers in Asia, I've had lots of missed lead times. In 17 years, not once have I had a supplier say to me, Mike, we missed the lead time by a week. Let us pick up the FedEx charges to send the replacements to Las Vegas. Not once. until I started putting into my contracts that if the lead time is missed by X days, I get X discount. And sometimes the suppliers forget about this, and I get a call at the 11th hour, Mike, we're friends, and I hope you understand, but we just got this new big order from Disney. Is it okay if I ship your watches a week late, Mike? Can you do me a favor on this one? And my answer is always pretty much the same. Mr. Wong, sorry to hear about that, and luckily I knew that this might happen because it's close to Chinese New Year, so I built in a 2-week window or some padding with my customers. But more importantly, I'm so glad we have this contract in place because I could really use that 5% discount. So you take your time. I'll give you 14 days. What happens? It ships tomorrow. So having the contract with penalties pre-agreed, and Mr. Wong can't say to me, oh, let's debate what the penalty term is. No, it's in this clear contract that we went over in front of you and all your coworkers at that lunch meeting 2 years ago. So relationship and saving face and contract terms, they all overlap. Okay, don't do this. You make the effort to have a clear contract about lead times. And then you ask Mr. Wong, boy, my customer would love it a week early. Can you ship ahead of time? Okay, now you're asking them a favor. Don't think that the supplier is not keeping score. Later, when they have a problem, they're going to ask the same thing to you. We're going to miss Christmas this year. Is it okay if we get it in early January to you rather than early December? So don't break the terms of your own contract because that leaves the suppliers an open door. Okay, integrate the quality manual into the contract. What I mean is, if you've taken the effort to define what are the specifications, the bill of material, even social accountability issues, if you have a written document in place, staple it to the contract, make it part of the agreement so that, God forbid, something goes wrong, or even if the supplier just needs to reference, hey, what's the quality standard? They've got more than just a PO that says 10,000 units. It's 10,000 units of XYZ material processed by certain date. So take all the documents that you have, as long as they're readable, and put it into this PO packet. Realize at the end of the day that your supplier's mistakes, that's your exposure with your customer. So it's up to us to really manage the supply chain because as buyers, we're on the line. Okay, intellectual property, I could do hours on this topic alone, and we covered it a little bit yesterday, and at last year's seminar I did a whole hour. So if you're serious about these issues, and only a few people raised their hands, so know that if you visit the blog, and I'll give you the links later, we can go into this in more depth. But for now, a couple things to remember. The contract itself isn't going to protect you. For example, let's say that you have an agreement with a supplier where they're going to put your logo on their product